Hi, Yuka. So you are starting with Donald Trump. We've been speaking about him a lot on the programme this evening. He's issued a pardon for the founder of the world's largest cryptocurrency exchange.
Well, Sharon, his name is Chanpeng Zhao. He is the former CEO of Binance. He spent 4 months in prison last year after pleading guilty to charges that he failed to implement measures to prevent money laundering while running the crypto exchange. While Binance paid $4.3 billion to settle related allegations, the platform had been used by criminals to wash billions of dollars in illicit funds linked to child sex abuse, drug trafficking, and even terrorism. Although he has now stepped down as CEO, Zhao has remained Binance's largest shareholder and has deep ties to World Liberty Financial, a crypto venture that the Trump family launched in September. The pardon wipes Zhao's criminal record, but the White House said he was wrongfully prosecuted by the Biden administration in the first place. Let's take a listen.
This was an overly prosecuted case by the Biden administration. Even the judge in the case admitted that the Biden administration was pursuing a egregious over-sentencing of this individual. And the previous administration was very hostile to the cryptocurrency industry. So the president wants to correct this overreach of the Biden administration's misjustice, and he exercised his constitutional authority to do so.
Separately, Yuka, the Trump administration has taken its first direct action against Russia with sanctions targeting its two biggest oil firms.
The US Treasury Department has added the Rosneft and Lukoil that together account for about half of Moscow's crude exports to its list of foreign assets control, freezing their US assets and banning Americans from doing business with them. It also said penalties for sanctions violations could apply to foreign persons. The US has been taking part in a G7-led price cap mechanism, so could the new measure be more effective? Daniel Quinlan has the details.
Ratcheting up the pressure on the Russian economy. Previous measures were put in place designed specifically to avoid a supply problem. Conscious of the potential fragility of the post-COVID world economy, they sought to allow the flow of oil to continue but capped the price buyers could pay. To ensure the profits Russia had to fund its war were restricted, but sanctions regimes are always imperfect instruments.
Because Russia finds a way to circumvent them typically within 1-3 months, it varies. What sanctions can achieve successfully is limiting the resources available in Putin's hands to continue this war.
And circumventing sanctions is expensive. It adds cost to transactions. Russia employed an entire shadow fleet to try and get around price caps. Russian officials have been dismissive of the new sanctions, though some analysts have a more nuanced view.
It's unlikely that it will directly impact the country's budgets. However, they may have an indirect negative effect. If a company earns less, it pays less taxes. In the case of Rosneft, where the Russian state is the main shareholder, the company would also pay lower dividends.
And while there are not yet specific secondary sanctions on other foreign countries or companies, the US Treasury Department is warning that continuing to do business with them could result in being cut off from the American financial system.
Separately then, Yuka, the EU has also announced a new package of sanctions against Russia.
It's the 19th package of measures aimed at hurting Russia's war chest and is pretty wide-ranging. On energy, the most significant is a ban on imports of Russian LNG, or liquefied natural gas. It will apply from January 2027 for long-term contracts and within 6 months for short-term contracts. The EU has also added more vessels to its list of Moscow's shadow fleet and targeted some Chinese oil companies. Europe had already gone further than the United States on Russian oil, banning the import of seaborne crude and refined products. The EU and the UK also recently lowered the price cap to around $47 a barrel, 15% below the G7 cap. Since an energy crisis in the wake of the 2022 Russian invasion of Ukraine, Europe has significantly reduced its reliance on Russian fossil fuels, but some countries are still buying hundreds of millions of euros worth of them.
Finally then, Yuka, how have the markets been reacting to all this?
Well, global oil prices jumped on fears of a potential supply crunch. International benchmark Brent crude and the US's WTI both rose more than 5%. And global stocks mostly gained this Thursday. All three major US stock indexes closed higher, lifted further by the White House's confirmation that President Trump will indeed meet Chinese President Xi Jinping next week.